Chelsea, don't even think about showing up tonight. Mom doesn't need you ruining her birthday. I sat in my 23rd floor office overlooking downtown Boston at sunset, holding the phone away from my ear as my father's voice cut through the speaker. His tone was cold, dismissive, like he was giving orders to someone beneath him. I glanced at the contract spread across my mahogany desk, pages that would transform everything I had worked for over the past 5 years. The sale of my company, my dream, my proof that I was more than the invisible daughter they pretended I wasn't. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I simply said, "I understand, Dad," and ended the call. I set the phone down, smiled to myself, and picked at my pen. The clock on the wall showed 6:30 in the evening. The party would begin in 90 minutes. I signed my name on the final page. I remained seated in my office after hanging up, staring at the signed contract in front of me. The silence felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of decision, of clarity. I thought about the journey that brought me here. Tech Vista Solutions, my company. 5 years ago, it was nothing but an idea scribbled on a napkin in a coffee shop. A dream I carried in my chest while working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Now, it employed 87 people, occupied this beautiful office space, and had just been acquired by Harrison Tech Group for $47 million. I leaned back in my chair and let my mind drift to childhood. I was 8 years old, standing in the kitchen with my report card clutched in my small hands. All A's! I was so proud. My brother Brandon, 4 years older, had just shown Dad his math test with a big red A circled at the top. Dad lifted Brandon up, spun him around, told him he was brilliant. When I showed my report card, he barely glanced at it. "That's good, Chelsea, but you know what would really help this family? If you learn to cook better. Mom could use help in the kitchen. Brandon needs to focus on his studies." I remember the way my excitement deflated, like a balloon losing air. I was 8. I had straight A's, and all he saw was someone who should be in the kitchen. That pattern continued throughout my entire childhood. Brandon was sent to Westfield Academy, an expensive private school with the best teachers and resources. I stayed at Lincoln Public School. When I asked why, Dad said, "Boys need the investment. They're the ones who will support families someday. You'll get married, Chelsea. Your husband will take care of you." When Brandon wanted to join the robotics club, Dad bought him a $500 kit. When I wanted to join the coding club, he said it was a waste of time for girls. When Brandon got his driver's license, Dad bought him a used Honda. When I got mine, I had to save up my babysitting money to share Mom's old station wagon. Fast forward to 5 years ago. I was 27, fresh out of business school, bursting with an idea. I had developed software prototypes during grad school, simple but effective management tools for small businesses. I needed $50,000 to turn it into something real. I sat across from Dad in his study, nervous but hopeful. I showed him my business plan, my market research, my financial projections. He didn't even finish reading the first page. "Chelsea, this is cute, but you don't have what it takes to run a company. Business requires tough decisions, long hours, thick skin. I don't want to waste money on something that'll fail in 6 months. My answer is no." 3 months later, Brandon came to Dad with an idea for a restaurant chain. He had no business degree, no restaurant experience, just enthusiasm and Dad's favoritism. Dad wrote him a check for $200,000 on the spot. No interest, no payback schedule, just a gift wrapped in the language of investment. I watched it happen. I watched Brandon's restaurants struggle, then fail one by one. Within 2 years, all 3 locations were closed. Dad never asked for the money back. He called it a learning experience, said Brandon was brave for trying. Meanwhile, I had taken my idea to a bank. They rejected me twice. On the third try, a loan officer named Janet took a chance on me with a $20,000 small business loan at 14% interest. I worked as a bartender at night, a receptionist during the day, and built my software on weekends. I slept 4 hours a night. I ate ramen noodles for dinner. I cried in my car more times than I could count. But I built something real, something that worked. Now, Brandon was 36, unemployed, living off what remained of Dad's generosity. But at every family dinner, Dad still introduced him as my son, the entrepreneur. Meanwhile, when people asked about me, Dad changed the subject. He didn't know what I did. He never asked. I could have been selling pencils on the street for all he cared. I looked back at the contract. $47 million. Harrison Tech Group, the third largest tech company in America, wanted what I had built. Their CEO, Gregory Morrison, had called me 3 weeks ago. Chelsea, we've been watching your company. You've created something remarkable. We want to bring Tech Vista into our portfolio, and we want you to stay on as senior advisor. The offer was more money than I had ever imagined. But there was a catch. Gregory needed to finalize everything tonight. He explained during our last call. I have a board meeting tomorrow morning at 8. They need this signed and announced before then. Can you meet me at 8 this evening? I thought about the timing. Mom's birthday party started at 7. It would run until 10, knowing how Dad liked to show off at these events. I explained the situation to Gregory, told him about my family, about being excluded, about the phone call I knew was coming. Gregory had been sympathetic but firm. Chelsea, I understand family is complicated, but this is the only window we have. If we miss it, the deal falls through. The board moves on to other acquisitions. It's now or never. So, I made my choice. I called Mom first. Her voice was warm when she answered, the only warmth I ever felt from that house. Honey, I'm so sorry about your father. I heard what he said. I didn't know he was going to call you. I told her about the deal, about the meeting, about the choice I had to make. There was silence on the line. Then she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Go, sweetheart. This is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you. I'm proud of you. I'll explain everything to the guests. But before I could thank her, I heard Dad's voice in the background. What are you telling her? Give me that phone. There was a scuffle. Then Dad's voice came through, sharp and angry. If you don't show up tonight, you are no longer my daughter. Do you understand me? You will destroy your mother's special day, and I will never forgive you. I took a deep breath. I understand, Dad. I have to go now. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from relief. I was finally choosing myself. I grabbed my purse, took a last look at the signed contract, and walked out of my office. It was 7 o'clock. The city lights were beginning to sparkle below. My phone buzzed with the text from Brandon. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I turned off my phone and headed for my car. The Capitol Grill was one of Boston's finest restaurants, the kind of place where deals worth millions happened over perfectly cooked steaks and aged wine. I arrived at 7:30, my heels clicking against the marble floor as the hostess led me to a private room in the back. Gregory Morrison was already there, sitting at the head of a long table. He stood when I entered, extending his hand with a warm smile. Chelsea, thank you for coming. I know tonight wasn't easy for you. Gregory was 52, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He had built Harrison Tech from a small software company to an empire worth billions. Next to him sat his chief financial officer, David Wells, and their lead attorney, a woman named Jennifer Walsh. The room felt professional but welcoming.
Gregory gestured to the seat beside him. Please, sit. Let's go over the final details. Jennifer opened a leather folder and slid it
Across the table, Jennifer slid the folder toward me. This is the final agreement. Everything we discussed is here. $40 million paid immediately upon signing. $7 million in performance-based compensation over the next 2 years. You'll remain as senior advisor for a minimum of 1 year, with a salary of $250,000 annually. After that, you're free to pursue other ventures or stay with us. Your team keeps their jobs. Your company name stayed on the product. You maintain creative input on future development. I read through every page carefully. This was the biggest decision of my life. I couldn't afford to miss anything. But everything was exactly as we had negotiated. Fair, generous, respectful. Gregory watched me read, patient and calm. Take your time. This is your life's work. You should be certain. When I reached the final page, I looked up at him. Why do you want my company so much? There are bigger firms out there. We're not the only ones doing management software. Gregory leaned back in his chair. Because you built something from nothing. You saw a gap in the market that nobody else saw. Small businesses need affordable, intuitive software, and you delivered. But more than that, you have integrity. Your clients love you. Your employees are loyal. That kind of culture doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the founder cares. We want that DNA in our company. His words meant more to me than he could know. For the first time in my life, someone in a position of power saw my value. I picked up the pen. The clock on the wall showed 7:55. I signed my name. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. 5 years of sleepless nights. 5 years of doubt and struggle. 5 years of proving myself to a world that expected me to fail. It all came down to this signature. Gregory shook my hand. Congratulations, Chelsea. You're officially part of the Harrison Tech family. David smiled and poured champagne into 4 glasses. To new beginnings. We raised our glasses and drank. The champagne tasted like victory. Gregory glanced at his watch. Our PR team is releasing the press statement right now, 8 o'clock sharp. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. I saw the press release on the screen. The headline read, Harrison Tech Group acquires Tech Vista Solutions for $47 million. Below it was a photo of me from our company website, alongside text describing me as a visionary entrepreneur who transformed the small business software landscape. I felt my chest tighten. This was really happening. Within 15 minutes, this will be on Business Insider, TechCrunch, and Bloomberg, Gregory said. Your life is about to change. Hope you're ready. I thought about Mom's party happening right now just a few miles away. I thought about Dad, probably bragging about Brandon to his friends, never once mentioning me. I thought about how none of them knew what I had accomplished. Until now. Meanwhile, across town, the party was in full swing. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, the dining room table covered with food and a large cake. About 40 guests filled the space. Friends, family, colleagues from Dad's accounting firm, neighbors from the street. Mom sat in the living room, smiling politely as people wished her happy birthday, but I could see in her eyes that she was thinking about me. Dad stood near the fireplace, holding court with a group of men. Brandon was at his side, in the middle of another story about his new business idea, his latest scheme to make money without actually working. At 8:15, a man named Thomas, one of Dad's business associates and the CEO of a small consulting firm, pulled out his phone to check his messages. His eyes went wide. He let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. Robert, did you know your daughter just sold her company for $47 million? The room went silent. People stopped mid-conversation. Heads turned towards Thomas. Dad's face went pale. What are you talking about?
Thomas walked over and showed him the phone screen. Right here, it's all over the business news. Chelsea Thompson, CEO of Tech Vista Solutions, acquired by Harrison Tech Group, $47 million. The room erupted in whispers. Guests pulled out their own phones, frantically searching for the news. Within seconds, multiple people were reading the same headlines, looking at the same photo of me. I didn't know Chelsea had a company. 47 million? That's incredible. Robert, why didn't you tell us your daughter was so successful? Dad stood frozen, his face turning red. He tried to speak, but no words came. Brandon's confident expression crumbled. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Finally, Dad managed to stammer out a response. Yes, well, Chelsea has been doing some tech work. I knew she was involved in software, but his voice was weak, unconvincing. It was obvious he knew nothing about my company, nothing about my success. The guests exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable, others impressed. Mom stood up from her chair, tears streaming down her face. She raised her glass of wine. To my daughter, Chelsea, who achieved what she dreamed of, despite everything. Her voice cracked on the last word. A few people raised their glasses and murmured in agreement, but the mood in the room had shifted. It was no longer a celebration. It was awkward, tense, filled with unspoken questions. Dad excused himself and walked quickly to his study. I could picture him there, hands shaking as he dialed my number. My phone, still turned off in my purse, didn't ring, but I knew he was trying. Back at the restaurant, Gregory and I were finishing our champagne when my phone suddenly buzzed with a flood of messages. I had turned it back on to check for any urgent business matters. 342 missed calls from Dad, 10 text messages. I didn't read them. Instead, my phone rang again. Dad's name appeared on the screen. I excused myself from the table and answered. Dad's voice exploded through the speaker. Chelsea, what in the hell is this? You made us look like fools. I stepped into the restaurant hallway, keeping my voice calm. I didn't make you look like anything, Dad. I just lived my life. You need to call the press and tell them this is wrong. Tell them the deal fell through. Why would I do that? It's true. Because you're embarrassing this family. People think we didn't support you. I paused. You didn't support me, Dad. How dare you? I want you to fix this right now. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't do that. Enjoy Mom's party. I hung up. Gregory was standing in the doorway, a concerned look on his face. Family troubles? Something like that. He put a hand on my shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you handled that with remarkable grace. We walked back to the table. David and Jennifer congratulated me again, and we spent another hour discussing transition plans and timelines. By the time I left the restaurant, it was almost 10. I drove home through the quiet streets of Boston, my mind spinning. My phone kept buzzing with messages. Dad, Brandon, relatives I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly wanting to reconnect. I turned the phone to silent and tossed it onto the passenger seat. When I got home to my small apartment in Cambridge, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window looking out into the city lights. For the first time in my entire life, I felt free. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the need to prove myself to people who would never see me. I raised my glass to the skyline. Here's to me. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. For a moment, I forgot about everything. Then I reached for my phone and reality came flooding back. 342 unread emails, 67 text messages, 23 voicemails. I scrolled through the emails first. Most were congratulatory messages from clients, colleagues, and industry contacts, warm words from people who had watched me build Tech Vista from nothing. But mixed in were strange emails from people I didn't know. Requests for money, pitches for investments, sob stories from supposed distant relatives I had never heard of.
Without reading past the first line, social media was a different story. The news about the acquisition had spread everywhere. Most comments were positive. Congratulations, inspiring, well-deserved. But there were negative ones too. She probably got lucky. I bet it was family money that started her company. Trust fund baby trying to act self-made. I closed the apps. I had learned long ago not to let strangers' opinions define me. I got dressed and headed to the office. Today, I would officially announce the acquisition to my team. They deserved to hear it from me, not from the internet. At 9:30, I was in the middle of a staff meeting when our receptionist, Amanda, knocked on the conference room door. Her face looked worried. "Chelsea, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your father is here, and he's quite upset." My stomach dropped. I excused myself and walked to the lobby. Dad stood near the front desk, his face red and tight with anger. Brandon was next to him, arms crossed, wearing the same entitled expression he had our entire lives. "Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk now, in private." I led them to a small conference room and closed the door. Dad didn't sit. He stood with his hands on the table, leaning forward like he was trying to intimidate me. "I'll get straight to the point, Chelsea. I want my share." "My share of what?" "The money from the deal. I funded your company, remember?" I stared at him, genuinely confused. "I funded what? You refused to give me a single dollar." "That's not how I remember it," he snapped. "I gave you $50,000 to start. I want half of what you made." The room spun. This was insane. "Dad, you told me I would fail. You said no. I remember the rejection clearly." Brandon stepped forward. "And you stole my business idea anyway. I told you about management software 3 years ago. You took it and built your company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is insane. You're both lying." Dad's face darkened. "Watch your mouth, young lady. I have documents to prove it." And Brandon spoke with our lawyer. "You have 2 choices. Give us what we deserve, or we'll sue." Dad reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside was a legal notice from Thompson and Associates, a law firm downtown. I scanned the document. They were demanding $23.5 million, half of the $47 million. The claims cited breach of verbal agreement regarding the initial investment. "This is fraud. You never gave me any money." Dad crossed his arms. "Prove it. You think a judge will believe you over me? I've been a respected businessman in this city for 30 years. People know my name." "What do you have? A 5-year-old startup? And I have emails where we discussed the software idea. You took my concept and ran with it." I felt my hands shaking. "Get out of my office." Dad leaned closer. "You have 48 hours to respond. After that, this goes public. Imagine what the press will say. Successful CEO accused of stealing from her own family. Your reputation will be destroyed." They left without another word. I stood alone in the conference room, my heart pounding. I immediately called Amanda Price, my company lawyer. She had been with me from the beginning, one of the few people I trusted completely. I explained everything. Amanda listened carefully, then sighed. What about Brandon's claim? If he has emails mentioning management software, even vaguely, it could create doubt. Not that he'd win, but it muddies the waters. Then Amanda dropped the worst news. There's another issue. This kind of lawsuit could trigger clauses in your sale agreement with Harrison Tech. If there's legal uncertainty about ownership, they might have grounds to delay payment or even reduce the purchase price. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "You mean I could lose the deal?" "It's possible. I'll contact their legal team today. But Chelsea, you need to prepare for the worst." That afternoon, I received a link from Amanda. Someone had leaked the story to the press. The headline read, "Family Drama Behind Tech Success Story. Father and brother file lawsuit against TechVista CEO. The article cited unnamed sources close to the family, claiming I had used family funds to start my company and refused to repay them. The comment section exploded. Some people defended me. Others assumed guilt. Family doesn't lie about money like this. There must be truth to it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. By evening, the hashtag TechVista scandal was trending on Twitter. I watched my reputation, built over 5 years of hard work, begin to crumble in real time. Then my phone rang. Gregory Morrison. His voice was serious. "Chelsea, we need to talk. The board saw the news about the lawsuit." I felt sick. "And they're concerned. If your father can prove he funded the company, there could be ownership complications. We might need to put the final payment on hold." "For how long?" "Could be months, maybe longer." I closed my eyes. This was exactly what Dad wanted, to destroy everything I had built. Not because he deserved money, but because he couldn't stand to see me succeed where Brandon had failed. I thanked Gregory and promised to keep him updated. Then I sat in my office as the sun set, watching the city lights flicker on. I thought about giving up, about settling just to make it go away, but then I remembered every single time Dad had dismissed me, every time he had favored Brandon, every time he had made me feel small. And I got angry, really angry. I wasn't going to let them take this from me. I started digging into the lawyer representing Dad and Brandon, Thompson and Associates. The lead partner on the case was a man named Dylan Carter. The name sounded familiar. I searched through my old emails and found it. 3 years ago, Dylan had contacted me about investing in TechVista. He had offered $100,000 for 60% of my company. It was an insulting offer, and I had politely declined. Dylan had called me back, angry. "You'll regret this, Chelsea. I'll make sure of it." I had thought he was just blowing off steam. Now I understood. This wasn't about Dad or Brandon. This was revenge. Dylan had found my vulnerable family situation and exploited it. He had probably approached Brandon first, offering to help him get money from me, then pulled Dad into the scheme. This was bigger than a family dispute. This was a calculated attack. The next morning, I had a meeting scheduled at Harrison Tech headquarters. I arrived at 8, walking through their sleek glass lobby to the executive floor. Gregory's assistant led me to a conference room where Gregory, Jennifer Walsh, and the chief financial officer, David Wells, were waiting. The atmosphere was different from our celebratory dinner. No smiles, no champagne, just serious faces and closed laptops. Gregory gestured for me to sit. "Chelsea, thank you for coming. I'll be direct. Our board met this morning. They're nervous about the lawsuit." Jennifer opened a folder. "If your father can prove he provided initial funding, he might have a legitimate claim to partial ownership of TechVista. That could complicate our acquisition." I pulled out my own folder. "I have bank statements showing I never received money from him. I took out a loan from First National Bank for $20,000. It's all documented." Jennifer nodded. "I believe you, but legal battles take time, and in business, perception matters as much as truth. Our shareholders are watching. If this becomes a prolonged court case, our stock price could be affected." David spoke up. "We're not canceling the deal, Chelsea, but we need to protect ourselves. We're putting the second half of the payment on hold until this is resolved." I felt my chest tighten. For how long? Could be months, maybe longer. A year? I have employees who were counting on bonuses from this deal. I have investors expecting their returns. "We understand," Gregory said, "but we can't expose ourselves to legal risk. This is business." We spent another 30 minutes going over contingency plans. $20 million of my $47 million deal would be held in escrow indefinitely. After taxes and paying back my initial investors and bank loans, I had only about $10 million accessible. Still a significant amount, but not what I had planned for. I walked out of that meeting feeling like the walls were closing in. Back at my office, I called an emergency meeting with my leadership team. My chief technology officer, Nathan Brooks, my head of sales, Madison Cooper, and my operations manager, Lauren Hayes, sat around the table, all looking worried. I explained the situation as honestly as I could. The acquisition is still happening, but there is a legal complication. Some of our payout is delayed. Nobody's losing their jobs. The company is secure, but I wanted you to hear this from me. Nathan leaned forward. Is it true that your family is claiming they funded the company? No, it's not true. This is a baseless lawsuit and I'm going to fight it. But in the meantime, business continues as usual. The meeting ended, but I saw doubt in some of their eyes. That hurt more than anything Dad had said. These were people who had believed in me, who had worked alongside me through the hardest times. Now they were questioning whether I had been honest with them. That afternoon, my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. A man's voice, smooth and cold. Hello, Chelsea. This is Dylan Carter. I should have known you were behind this. Behind what? I'm just representing clients who have legitimate claims. My father never gave me any money. You know that. Can you prove it? Because I have bank statements showing a $50,000 withdrawal from his account, the same week you registered your company. Maybe he gave that money to someone who gave it to you. Maybe it was cash. The point is, there's reasonable doubt. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want, Dylan? I told you 3 years ago you'd regret saying no to me. But I'm reasonable. Drop the sale to Harrison Tech. Sell to my investment group instead. We'll pay $30 million, all cash, no questions asked. The lawsuit disappears. You're trying to steal my company. I'm offering you a way out. 24 hours to decide. After that, things get much worse. Oh, and Chelsea, check your email. I sent you something interesting. He hung up. I opened my email with shaking hands. The subject line read, Evidence for Court. Attached were scanned documents, a receipt showing my father's withdrawal of $50,000 dated the exact week I registered Tech Vista, a handwritten loan agreement with what looked like my signature at the bottom, and screenshots of emails between Brandon and me discussing management software ideas. I knew immediately that everything was fake. The loan agreement was forged, the emails doctored, but they looked convincing. A jury might believe them. I called Amanda. She examined the documents remotely while I stayed on the phone. She said, these could be fabricated, but proving that will take time and money. Expert witnesses, forensic analysis. Meanwhile, the lawsuit moves forward. What do I do? We could fight, but it'll be expensive, public, and messy. Or you could consider settling. Settling means giving them money they don't deserve. I know, but it might be the safer option. While we were talking, my phone started blowing up with notifications. I checked social media. Hundreds of new comments, all negative. Fake accounts were posting things like, Chelsea Thompson is a fraud. She stole from her own family. Typical entitled millennial. The attacks were coordinated, relentless. Someone had hired a troll farm to destroy my reputation. I knew it was Dylan. This was psychological warfare. By evening, 3 of my long-term clients had sent emails asking to discuss the controversy. They were worried about bad publicity affecting their own businesses. I spent 2 hours on phone calls reassuring them, but I could hear the doubt in their voices. One client, a man who had been with us since the beginning, said, Chelsea, I want to believe you, but this doesn't look good. Maybe we should pause our contract renewal until things settle down.
That night, I sat alone in my apartment with a bottle of wine and a blank notebook. I was trying to figure out my next move when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. My mother stood there, her face puffy and red from crying. I opened the door. Mom, Margaret, walked in and immediately hugged me. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. I can't keep quiet anymore. We sat on my couch. Mom twisted her hands in her lap, looking older than I had ever seen her. Your father is lying. I know he is. That $50,000, he withdrew it to pay gambling debts. He's been gambling for years. I just found out last month. Gambling? Yes. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips to Connecticut. He's lost over $300,000. That's why he's doing this. He needs your money to cover what he owes. I felt like I had been hit with cold water. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was afraid of him, of what it would mean for our marriage, but I can't watch you destroy you. I'll testify in court if I have to. I'll tell them the truth. I hugged my mother tight. Thank you. But you know what this means, right? If you testify against Dad, your marriage is over. She pulled back and looked me in the eyes. Some things are more important than a bad marriage. You're my daughter. I should have protected you years ago. After Mom left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I had a choice to make. Give in to Dylan's demands and walk away with less money but some peace, or fight back, risk losing everything, and potentially destroy what was left of my family. The easy choice was to settle, take the $30 million from Dylan's group and move on with my life. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered being 8 years old with straight A's that nobody celebrated. I remember working 3 jobs to fund my dream while Brandon got handed everything. I remembered the phone call telling me not to show up at Mom's birthday because I would ruin it. No, I wasn't giving up. Not this time. At 6 a.m., I called my college best friend, Sarah Whitman. Sarah and I had been roommates at Boston University. We'd stayed close through the years, even as our careers took different paths. She was now a senior partner at Spencer & Crane, one of the most prestigious law firms in Boston, specializing in white-collar crime and corporate fraud. Sarah, I need your help. This isn't just a family lawsuit. There's something much bigger happening. We met for coffee at 7. I laid out everything: Dylan Carter, the forged documents, the coordinated social media attack, the pressure from Harrison Tech. Sarah listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. She said, "This sounds like fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. If we can prove Dylan fabricated evidence, he'll lose his law license and face criminal charges. How do we prove it? We investigate, and I know exactly who to call." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small office above a Thai restaurant in Cambridge. Marcus Taylor was a former FBI agent who had retired 5 years ago to start his own investigation firm. He was in his mid-50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. Sarah had worked with him on multiple cases. If anyone could find the truth, it was Marcus. I explained everything again. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "First thing we need to do is verify those bank records Dylan has. I'll check with your father's bank and pull the actual transaction records. If that withdrawal happened, we'll see where the money really went. I also want to investigate Dylan's history. Men like him don't just wake up one day and start forging documents. There's usually a pattern. Give me 48 hours. True to his word, Marcus called me 2 days later. "I found something. You need to see this." I drove to his office. Marcus handed me a thick folder. Dylan Carter has a history. 4 years ago, he was sued by a startup founder named Jason Wells. The claim was fraudulent misrepresentation.
My brother Brandon, the struggles I faced building Tech Vista, and the false accusations that led to this moment. Then I presented the evidence. Dr. Patricia Morgan explained how the supposed loan agreement was forged. Different ink, newer paper,
and a digitally copied signature. Allison Harper detailed how the emails were doctored, showing timestamps and edit trails. Marcus Taylor summarized his findings about Dylan Carter's criminal pattern, his payment to Brandon, and his financial ties to my father's casino debts. Finally, we played the recording of Dylan and Brandon's meeting. The room buzzed with murmurs as Dylan's voice filled the speakers, cold and incriminating. When the audio ended, I looked up. Every camera was pointed at me. "This is the truth," I said. "I built Tech Vista from nothing. I didn't steal from my family. I didn't lie to my investors. I've worked too hard and too honestly to let a corrupt lawyer destroy what I've built." Just then, a sound came from the back of the room. My mother walked in, followed by my father. Gasps rippled through the audience. They took seats in the front row. My father looked pale, defeated. I hesitated, but then he stood and walked toward the podium. "She's telling the truth," he said, voice trembling but clear. "Dylan Carter manipulated me. He promised to erase my debts if I helped him. I was desperate and ashamed. My daughter had nothing to do with that money. I'm sorry, Chelsea." The room erupted in flashes from cameras and shouts from reporters. Dylan jumped to his feet, shouting, "This is a lie. They're all lying." Security stepped in as journalists surrounded him, firing questions. My father turned to face him. "No, Dylan. The only liar here is you." The next day, every major outlet ran the story. Lawyer exposed in corporate extortion scheme. Tech Vista CEO vindicated. The Massachusetts Bar Association opened an investigation. Within a week, Dylan Carter's license was suspended. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for fraud and conspiracy. Brandon disappeared from Boston, and I haven't heard from him since. My father entered treatment for his gambling addiction. My mother filed for divorce and moved closer to me. Harrison Tech reinstated our deal in full, releasing the escrow funds after the legal dust settled. I finally received the full $47 million payout, and every employee got their promised bonuses. A few months later, Sarah, Marcus, and I met for dinner at the same restaurant where we had first planned the investigation. "You know," Sarah said, smiling, "you could have taken the easy way out and settled." I shook my head. That's not who I am. As I drove home that night, I passed the courthouse where it had all begun. The city lights reflected in the glass of the tall buildings, each one a reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. But I hadn't. I'd fought back, not just for money or reputation, but for my own peace. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Brandon, the way I was dismissed and underestimated. Then came my journey building Tech Vista, the bank loans, the rejection from my father when I asked for help, and the 3 jobs I worked to fund my dream. I displayed bank statements on the screen behind me, proving every dollar I borrowed came from First National Bank, not from my family. Then I introduced Dr. Patricia Morgan. She stepped forward and presented her analysis in clear scientific terms. "This document claiming to be a loan agreement is forged. The paper is too new. The ink doesn't match. The signature was copied from another source and digitally placed onto this document." Journalists scribbled notes furiously. I saw Dylan shift uncomfortably in his seat. Next came Allison Harper. She showed side-by-side comparisons of the original emails and the doctored versions Dylan had submitted. You can see here where text was added 6 months after the original email date. The metadata doesn't lie. These emails were manipulated to create a false narrative. More note-taking, more camera flashes. Marcus Taylor presented his investigation. Dylan Carter has a history of this behavior. He was sued 4 years ago for similar tactics against another startup founder. He was reprimanded by the Massachusetts Bar Association. He had been planning this attack for months, using Chelsea's family dynamics as leverage. Then Marcus revealed the connection between Dylan and the casino where my father owed money. Dylan had deliberately entrapped Robert Thompson in debt, then blackmailed him into participating in this fraudulent lawsuit. Finally, I played the recording of Dylan and Brandon at the coffee shop. The room fell silent as Dylan's voice came through the speakers, admitting to the entire scheme. When it ended, journalists erupted with questions. I raised my hand. "There's one more person I'd like you to hear from. My mother." The doors at the back of the room opened. Mom walked in, her hands shaking but her face determined. She made her way to the front. I took her hand and guided her to the microphone. Margaret Thompson stood before the cameras.
Especially women who didn't have family backing or traditional access to capital. We provided grants of up to $50,000 to 50 female founders each year, along with mentorship, resources, and connections. I personally mentored 10 of them, meeting with each one monthly to discuss challenges, celebrate wins, and offer guidance. Turning my pain into purpose gave me more satisfaction than any amount of money ever could. My personal life had also changed in unexpected ways. Gregory Morrison and I had grown closer over the months. It started with professional meetings that turned into long conversations over dinner. He was kind, brilliant, and respected my independence. We started dating 3 months ago, taking things slowly, no rush, no pressure, just two adults who enjoyed each other's company and shared similar values. It wasn't a fairy tale romance, but it was real. And after everything I had been through, real was exactly what I needed. But more than any external change, the biggest transformation was internal. I had spent so many years trying to prove myself to people who would never truly see me. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, became successful enough, my father would finally respect me, my brother would finally acknowledge me, my family would finally celebrate me. But I learned something crucial. You can't earn respect from people who aren't willing to give it, and you shouldn't have to. The people who truly love you will support you from the beginning. They'll cheer for your small victories and believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. The ones who only show up after your success, after you've proven yourself, after there's something in it for them, don't deserve your time or energy. I learned to build my life around people who saw my value before the world did. My mom, who always believed in me even when she couldn't say it out loud. Sarah, who dropped everything to help me fight back. The early employees at Tech Vista who took a chance on an unknown company. These were my people. I also learned that silence isn't weakness. The night Dad told me not to show up at Mom's birthday, I didn't argue or defend myself. I simply said, "I understand," and walked away. I let my success speak for itself, and it spoke louder than any argument ever could. Sometimes the most powerful response is to keep building, keep achieving, and keep moving forward while others waste their energy trying to tear you down. Forgiveness, I discovered, doesn't mean forgetting. I forgave my father for the years of neglect and favoritism. I forgave Brandon for his jealousy and his willingness to hurt me for money. But I didn't forget how they treated me. I couldn't. Those memories shaped who I became. They taught me resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who genuinely care. Forgiveness allowed me to release the anger that was poisoning my happiness, but remembering ensured I would never let anyone treat me that way again. Boundaries, I learned, are not just healthy, they're essential. The biggest lesson, though, was this: your family doesn't define you. Your choices do. Your work ethic does. Your character does. Your integrity does. I was born into a family that didn't value me, but I chose to value myself. I chose to work harder than anyone else. I chose to believe in my vision when nobody else did. And those choices created the life I have now. Not luck, not privilege, not family connections, just choices made one at a time, day after day, year after year. I stood by my office window, looking out at the Boston skyline as the sun set in shades of orange and pink. I thought about that phone call 6 months ago. Don't show up and spoil your mother's birthday. I smiled because I realized something. I didn't spoil anything. I set myself free. Free from the need for their approval, free from the weight of being invisible, free to build a life that was entirely, authentically mine.
My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a young woman named Emma, one of the entrepreneurs I was mentoring through the Rise Up Fund. Her message read, "Chelsea, I just signed my first major client, a $100,000 contract. I couldn't have done this without you believing in me when nobody else did. Thank you for seeing something in me I couldn't see in myself." I smiled and typed back quickly, "Emma, I saw what was always there. Keep going. You're just getting started. Believe in yourself. That's all you really need." I closed my laptop and gathered my things. I was meeting Mom for dinner in 30 minutes. Then Gregory and I were going to see a play at the Boston Opera House. My life was full in ways that had nothing to do with money, success, or proving anyone wrong. It was full because it was mine, built on my own terms, filled with people who genuinely cared about me and aligned with values that mattered. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. I still sometimes felt that old familiar ache of wanting my father's approval, even though I knew I didn't need it anymore. I still dealt with doubts and fears and the lingering trauma of years spent feeling invisible. But I also had joy. Real, deep, earned joy. The kind that comes from knowing you survived something difficult and came out stronger. The kind that comes from using your pain to help others. The kind that comes from living authentically instead of performing for an audience that will never appreciate you. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this story and you feel invisible right now, I want you to hear me clearly. If you feel like nobody believes in you, like your family doesn't see your value, like you're working twice as hard for half the recognition, I need you to know something. Believe in yourself first. That is enough. You don't need anyone's permission to be great. You don't need validation from people who refuse to give it. You already have everything you need inside you: the strength, the intelligence, the determination, the worth. It's all there. Don't wait for someone to discover you. Don't wait for someone to invest in you. Don't wait for someone to tell you that you're good enough. Start now with whatever resources you have. Build something, create something, become something. Not to prove others wrong, but to prove yourself right. To show yourself what you're capable of when you stop waiting for permission and start taking action. Success isn't about making the people who doubted you feel bad. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to believe in your dreams when nobody else did. It's about waking up every day and choosing yourself, choosing your vision, and choosing to keep going even when it's hard. And it will be hard. There will be moments when you want to quit, when the rejection feels like too much, when the doubt creeps in and whispers that maybe everyone else was right about you. In those moments, remember why you started. Remember what you're building. Remember that the people who gave up on you don't get to define your limits. And when you finally make it, when your hard work pays off and people suddenly want to be associated with your success, don't let them rewrite history. Don't let them claim they supported you all along. The truth matters. Your story matters. The nights you cried alone matter. The times you almost gave up but didn't matter. The people who believed in you from the beginning matter. Honor that truth. Protect that story because it's yours. I didn't need my father's permission to succeed. I never did, and neither do you. Whatever dream you're carrying, whatever vision keeps you up at night, whatever impossible thing you think you can't achieve because nobody in your life supports it, I'm here to tell you, go build it anyway. Let the doubters doubt. Let the critics criticize. Let the family members who should support you continue to overlook you. None of that changes what you're capable of. None of that diminishes your potential. None of that has power over your future unless you give it power. The woman I was 6 months ago would have been terrified to stand up to my father, to expose the truth publicly, to risk everything for the sake of justice. But the woman I became through that fire is stronger than I ever imagined possible. Not because the fire didn't hurt, it did, but because I walked through it anyway. Because I chose truth over peace. Because I chose self-respect over family approval. Because I chose myself, finally, after a lifetime of being everyone's last choice. So here's my final message to anyone who needs to hear it. You are enough, right now, as you are. With whatever resources you have or don't have, whatever education you got or didn't get, whatever family support exists or doesn't exist, you are enough to start. You are enough to try. You are enough to build something meaningful. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Not your parents, not your siblings, not society, not even the voice in your own head that sometimes sounds like all of them combined. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And when people ask how you did it, when they ask where you found the strength, the courage, or the resources, tell them the truth. You found it inside yourself because that's where it always was. That's where it still is. That's where it will always be, waiting for you to recognize it, claim it, and use it to build the life you deserve. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever achieved something great only for the people closest to you to try to diminish it or take credit for it? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope, strength, or a reminder of your own power, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding your strength. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone fighting their own battles with family dynamics, self-worth, or the courage to pursue their dreams. Together, we're stronger. Together, we rise. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that your dreams matter even when others don't. I'm cheering for you. I believe in you. Now go show the world what you're made of. You've got this. Music.